Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 150 of ThROH The Years, the podcast that reviews Ring of Honor show by show from the beginning. My name is Trevor Dame, and I am joined, as always, by the co-host, Matt Feuerstein. Matt, it is a milestone episode 150, and I am losing my mind for a variety of reasons, and you know one. I'll reveal it to the listeners in a second, but the first one is, When I saw a few days ago that it was going to be, this episode was going to be 150, I was like, man, the big round every 50 milestone. I was like, this is going to be the last time we get one of these. And then I was like, well, we kind of said, again, with the caveat that we could end the show at any time if either one of us gets bored or Matt, finally realizes he's made a mistake talking to me.
Or we die. We could die. We'll definitely die. So that's
absolutely
one day. Hopefully not before the end of the show, but it's going to happen.
No. So the one big thing, though, when I was going over all this was realizing that actually there will be a 200th episode, because if we do go through the end of 2008, which is kind of a tentative plan, that would be 212 episodes total. And I know you have an idea to do one more episode after that, and I have an idea for maybe we get to a wrap-up episode after that. That would be 214. So technically, we're between, I guess, 2/3 and 3/4 of the way through the show, and at our schedule, that's probably still like 3 more years. We'll be around for Trump's 3rd term or 4th term. Am I right, folks? But otherwise, I'm just going to keep saying things that Matt's going to have to edit out, just dumb, offensive, horrifying jokes.
I'll keep that one in.
I've already said one thing that you're not going to hear, but Matt, 150 episodes. That's crazies. Can't believe it.
It's crazies. Can't believe it. Yeah, I mean, one thing you got to notice about Trevor, he sure is talking a lot about the end of the show these days. So that should give you an idea what his mindset is. But sorry, dude, you're stuck.
No, I'm just thinking about the end of everything lately, man. Mm-hmm. I'm getting old. But and speaking a little peek behind the curtain, you'd think after 150 episodes, this would be a well-oiled machine. I misread a message Matt sent me like 3 weeks ago scheduling the next episode and thought the next episode's record was going to be tomorrow and was like 10 minutes away from missing my own show that I co-host. And so that's okay because I watched the show in advance and did all my notes, although usually I do one pass through my notes the day before to edit out stuff. So you know what, folks, we'll go on this adventure together, because maybe like midway through the show, I'll just start reading like half of a recipe for brownies that I accidentally put in this notepad file. But
do you like to bake brownies?
I have in the past.
Because I like to bake brownies, and I make very good brownies. They are just normal brownies, but they are very, very good. Everyone loves them.
I make the Claire Saffitz, the YouTube chef. She makes brownies, but they are so rich that like if you eat one, you are down for the couch for the rest of the day. But I am also not afraid to slum it. Like I'll use a box brownie mix. Like I have my go-to. I'm lazy but want something sweet but don't want something that kind of resembles homemade is those Ghirardelli brownie mixes. Like those will get the job done. If you just want something that kind of feels like someone loves you but doesn't take that much work that you can cook for yourself, you can kind of pretend, and it's not bad. It is not bad.
Nice. I haven't had box brownies in very many years, but I will tell you one secret to really good homemade brownies is use completely unsweetened 100% chocolate, and then you add all the sugar yourself. Try it.
That's very interesting. I do the Claire Saffitz one. I think it's got chocolate chips in it, and you melt like 2 kinds of chocolate, and you put the like Dutch cocoa in it on top of that. So
the kind I make actually does not have any cocoa, which is unusual, but they're still very, 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 very good.
Yeah, wow. You know what? Let's just spend the next 2 hours talking about brownies. So we'll pretend to be voices of wrestling. We'll spend 90 minutes talking about other things.
I will spend the next few hours eating brownies. What do you think of that? No,
Man,
I won't. I don't have any. Sorry. Damn.
I was gonna say I'm jealous. You know what? We're all an hour away from brownies, but
That's
with
right.
Ghirardelli, our new sponsor of our show.
Yeah. Not the from scratch. Probably need a little bit more prep than that because you have to like get measure out the ingredients. But yeah, and then let it. But yes, I would say at least a couple hours away.
Yeah. But so speaking of the fallibility of Trevor Dame, I have a minor correction from the last show, which I should get to here, which is I talked about the last show. We talked about how the show we covered, Domination, was like the shortest ROH DVD because they took off the Bryan Danielson versus Nigel match to save it for the pay-per-view that's coming up on the next show. And, it was like 2 hours and like 20 or 2:15 or something like that. And I was like, oh, it was shorter. Well, actually, there was something else on that DVD. They put a Bryan Danielson versus Jay Lethal match from a Full Impact Pro show onto that DVD to make up for taking the Danielson-Nigel match off. But it's almost like, Matt, that you and I didn't watch the DVD version of that show. It's almost like we found another way to watch it.
Well, hold on. Trevor, I knew that. I just don't think that counts, and I think you are still correct.
And I will just say, Tony Khan, you can't sue me. I bought all those DVDs at the time. I sold most of them. You can't guilt me into how I enjoy the show now. I paid my price before you were even on the scene, buddy, when you were still posted on the message boards. But, yeah, so finally we got one little note before the next show. Before we start the review from PW Insider, they wrote, as the pay-per-view, the upcoming Respect Deserved pay-per-view airs, it'll be interesting to see feedback from people who have never seen ROH firsthand, as the hope internally is that the pay-per-view exposure will help the ROH name become more known nationally. The company is wisely not deluding themselves that they are going to set the world on fire or make billions immediately, instead taking a rather conservative approach towards the entire process. ROH has started discussions with DVD companies in hope of bringing their product nationally to retail stores, which is the next hoped-for step towards bringing the Ring of Honor name to further national prominence. Matt, that did happen, didn't it? Didn't some ROH DVDs, like a couple, make it to like retail stores?
Well, some of the early ROH shows were in retail stores, but then ROH put out like compilations in retail stores around this time, maybe shortly thereafter. So that's what I remember. I don't think that at this point they were putting out actual shows. Maybe the pay-per-views, I guess. Maybe they sold the pay-per-views in retail stores, now that I think about it. But I'm pretty sure none of the other regular DVDs were there.
Yeah, and
and by the way, I want to apologize in advance. If anyone hears any like excitement and revelry in the background, there is a block party on my block. My windows are closed, but the partying is very hearty, so it might seep through. I don't know if you could hear it right now.
I don't hear anything, Matt,
right.
but
I'm not imagining it, I swear. I'm not pretending that people are partying on my block. It's really happening. I swear.
Right. See the sacrifices Matt makes. He could be getting down right now at the block party, probably having a nice hot dog, soy dog.
I'm vegetarian.
See, I know you. Yeah. I remember things, but yeah, it's crazy how quickly times has changed, where ROH is talking about this point. It'd be great to get the exposure of putting like a DVD in stores. And now it's like, I think I know one store in my town that sells DVDs new, and it's Walmart. Which is insane, because they still not sell not just like new release movies on Blu-ray, they sell them on like regular like 480p DVD, and I'm like, who is buying this copy of like Nobody on like base level non-HD DVD for like $9? But I assume somebody is.
I wonder if they still sell it at like Target and Best Buy, because we don't have a Walmart here, but we do have those. So I am assuming that you can buy DVDs in Brooklyn, but why would you? I don't know.
Best Buy just pulled the DVDs in our city, at least in like the last year or so. I think they like pulled out like, and they didn't have hardly any, but they there's like no CDs, no DVDs anymore. So
not to get political here, but the consolidation of media companies makes me really, really, really think that physical media is very important, because, the fewer people that control what is available to stream, and the more they can edit it and change it and censor it, the worse I think our cultural, I guess, general lexicon is. So I kind of miss physical media. Even though I don't really indulge in it myself.
Well, wrestling fans, like, we know this as well as anyone. Like people have been complaining the recent years about this new trend of these streaming sites just randomly taking, content shows off and movies off of the services and just for tax write-offs or whatever, and all of a sudden you lose access to this thing where it's like, you already made it. Like, I should be able to, as long as I'm subscribed, watch this forever. But like wrestling fans predate that, because I feel like we've had to live for a long time with WWE owning these massive libraries of stuff and just knowing it's sitting there gathering dust. And now we're living in this world where it feels like every few years, so much of this content, especially like WWE stuff, the streaming goes to a new platform. And a lot of times these platforms, will go, we're not going to go to the trouble of moving all that stuff over because people don't watch the legacy stuff to begin with. And so like, there's no, we went very quickly in the span of the Ring of Honor show we're covering today, from like, oh, physical media is still like the prominent way, to like, oh, streaming will be like the new utopia where we will have everything we've ever wanted to see forever, to now it's like, like you were saying, like, we need to bring back physical media because no one's going to steal my copy of Beach Blast 92 on VHS. Will I ever dig out a VCR and actually watch it that way again? No, but I could.
I was looking up like VCRs, like just in case like I wanted to ever watch some of this old stuff again, like just like on Amazon, like how much it costs to buy a VCR, and they're much more expensive than they used to be. So it's almost like I should probably just find a used VCR somewhere that is cheap as possible and get it so that I could have access to this stuff. Luckily, there's people online doing like really good work as far as like preserving and posting and having like Google Drives and all this stuff where you can find a lot of old wrestling, and I'm sure that's true and for other forms of media too. But it's just, I don't know. It's more of a rant about like corporate consolidation, like not just about this stuff, but like the news media, like all sorts of stuff that I'm very nervous about. If I won the lottery and like was a like really, really, really like rich person, like a billionaire or whatever, I'd eventually give all the money away. But I think I would try to fund like just like loss leader independent media in like every major city in my country to like, I don't know, have actual news reporting because I'm afraid of that going away. Very afraid.
Yeah, it is, monopolies. It's even the game isn't that good. But that brings us to the show we are covering today, the start of a new double shot. Let's escape the horrible world we live in for a couple hours. And United We Stand was the Ring of Honor show we were covering tonight. And it took place June 22nd, 2007 at the Montgomery County Fairgrounds Coliseum in Dayton, Ohio, in front of a reported crowd of 650 fans. Now, normally on the show, we use the Wrestling Observer for show attendances. And as I always say, I know that the Observer probably isn't always accurate with attendances. I have reasons to doubt occasionally some of them. But for this podcast, I wanted to pick one source for the numbers so it could at least be consistent against itself if I ever compare numbers. Or I think at the year-end episodes, I usually do a couple of stats and stuff. So I picked the Observer for a bunch of reasons. And one of them was you could always count the Observer to always have a number, except they don't have a number for the show or the next. And if you're wondering why, well, Chris Benoit murdered his family 2 days after this show. And
sorry for preceding that with a cackle, but it is not funny. But it is kind of like funny that I like just realized what you were about to say, and that is why I laughed.
Yeah, and it's funny because it caught me off guard too, because I forgot sometimes the dates of things, and then I was like, why doesn't the Observer have? And then I read like the next week's Observer. I was like, oh, that's why it was. And the Torch didn't have the numbers, and there was very little coverage for this show because, as you might understand, when one of the most horrifying and biggest wrestling stories of our lifetimes happened, the wrestling newsletters were all of a sudden not very concerned with reporting on a U.S. Indie B show. So yeah, there isn't going to be a lot of behind the scenes details and notes on this one. So all of that is to say, I was forced to use the cage match number here. that sounds a little high for the Dayton show. The only other number I could find was one live report that estimated between 500 and 700, which that's a pretty wide swing for a U.S. Indie. So I was just like, I'll just use the cage match number. So 650 it is. So take my usual grain of salt with an extra grain of salt. And we opened the show with Rebecca Bayless backstage, as is usually the case now. She tries to find the Briscoes to get comments ahead of their main event tonight, but instead she runs into Tank Toland and Bobby Dempsey. Tank is making Bobby do squats without a shirt on. Rebecca asks if they've seen the Briscoes, and Tank tells her, they're busy. Maybe they're outside. Rebecca goes outside to find Lacey and Jimmy Jacobs up against a car. Jacobs is smoking and looking moody, as is his new gimmick. Rebecca asks if they know where the Briscoes are, and they provide zero answer. Then maybe 10 to 15 feet away from them, Rebecca finds the Briscoes. They are just sitting in the parking lot. So to sum this up, Rebecca's grand quest to find the Briscoes was to ask someone 3 feet away from her in a locker room, walk through a door, and then ask someone like another 10 feet away, and then turn to her side and see that the Briscoes were another 10 feet further away.
Yeah, you figure if they're going to do a whole skit where she's looking for the Briscoes and runs into like wacky characters, they would like have something entertaining planned, but instead they were just like, no, and then the other people didn't say anything, and then they were just right there. Like it's like they had this idea for something silly, but couldn't be bothered to actually write something interesting.
Like, I think Gabe, like, I can't really express in words how ridiculous this was. Like, Gabe loved his ROH backstage segments where someone had to find someone else, but because they ran small buildings, they didn't want to waste DVD time. The person that they needed to find was always like 8 steps away, often within eye shot of the person looking for them. And I think when Gabe booked segments like this, he wanted this to be kind of like, oh, it's this organic thing where you get little bits of different characters, interactions, but when they're always couched this idea of, oh, I can't find this person, and they're always right beside you, it just comes off as ridiculous.
Yeah, but also, like, character interactions didn't amount to anything. Like, no. That's what I thought was funny about it. Yeah, but I mean, as far as, like, beginnings of DVDs go, I guess the idea wasn't so bad, but I always find it weird what they choose to open DVDs and close DVDs with, as we'll talk about later on.
Yeah, and in fact, just to finish up the segment, going to your point about how inconsequential this was, so Rebecca finds the Briscoes. The Briscoes say they were just chilling, waiting on Rebecca to find them. Jay's wearing a Bob Marley shirt, which is probably the most entertaining part of this entire segment. I believe the Whalers just played My Town yesterday, so everything's connected. But
were you about to say, but not Bob Marley? Because yes, we know.
I was like, do I have to explain that he's dead? But yeah, the Whalers. It's always weird. Like, it's just like, for some reason, it'd be like if you just saw Crazy Horse was playing, like, which I'm sure happens. But anyway, so the Briscoes say their recent success at 2 out of 3 falls matches hasn't been luck. It's talent. It's straight skill. Jay promises to win tonight in 2 straight falls, just like they always do. Mark says, man up, boys. So yeah, this entire trip for Rebecca, the payoff is the shortest, most standard, get your one talking point across in 15 seconds promo you have ever seen in Ring of Honor. And that brings us to the 2 dark matches that did not make the DVD. We first had Bobby Dempsey and Dingo defeating Alex Payne and Ernie Osiris. And then we had Mitch Franklin defeating a young wrestler by the name of Jon Moxley. So yeah, Jon Moxley did not, really make it to Ring of Honor, but he don't say that Jon Moxley did not pay his dues. And that's nothing against Mitch Franklin, but like Mitch Franklin was probably one of the lowest wrestlers on the totem pole here. And Jon Moxley couldn't get a win over him on an ROH dark match. So that's called starting your career.
Did you ever see Jon Moxley's hair from that era?
Yes, it was gorgeous.
It is pretty crazy. Like, well, he did like a WWE match, and his hair was like long and like pink. Did you ever see that?
I don't. I vaguely recall that, but like I can't really picture it in my mind. But like pink John's Moxley is I said John's Moxley was is hitting me. So yeah, I should look that up afterwards. But Matt, the opener we actually got to see was El Generico and Kevin Steen defeating Irish Airborne of Dave and Jake Christ in 10 minutes, 21 seconds after when Generico pinned Dave Christ after he and Steen hit him with the package pile driver brainbuster combo. So before I get you on the review, Matt, I just want to note to anyone that watches the show, listen during the entrances for one fan living my nightmare, which is when El Generico's entrance music abruptly stops, one fan keeps singing along for like a line of Olays before realizing what's happened. He's the only one singing it. He stops mid Olays, and then people in the crowd laugh at him. Matt, that's an honest mistake. If that happened to me, that would have taken me out of the entire show. I would have just sat there for the rest of the show and beat myself up over that.
I'm so sorry. I'm sure something similar has happened to me. So, and I'm still here. I'm still here somehow.
On the last show, we saw Irish Airborne get a promo out of nowhere where they asked for one more chance in ROH, and here's their one more chance, Matt. How'd they do?
Well, they were just a backdrop kind of for the Kevin Steen show mainly. Like, I mean, a lot of it was just about getting the Steen and Generico act established. You know, like it was much more about their dynamic where El Generico is a good guy and he's hugging Irish Airborne at the beginning while Steen is just being a dick the whole time. And Steen's getting mad at El Generico for not being aggressive enough. He calls him a jackass at one point. Like there's a part where like early on where Generico does normal wrestling and then Steen tags in and just shoves Generico out of the way and just gets really aggressive with Jake Christ, and then he tags Generico back in and says, "Now do what I just did." Like there's like that sort of the dynamic, and that's really what the match is all about. Just getting that concept over. Steen does a lot of classic heel moves, pokes Jake in the eyes, does a lot of his big moves, and they all get a good reaction. The front flip, leg drop, and the Irish Airborne, like, you know, they do some cool stuff. Dave does a Fosbury flop onto both Steen and Generico, which was very nicely done. Actually, Generico usually does that move, but this time it was Dave Christ. There was a spot where Dave yells, "Here we go!" before Steen comes from behind and slaps him and yells, "You're not going anywhere." I enjoyed that. Really, the highlights were Kevin Steen. I thought Irish Airborne did fine, but it wasn't really about the action. It was about the showcase. So it wasn't a squash match. It was a showcase match. So there was like a little bit of competitiveness, but I don't think Irish Airborne did anything to stand out enough to keep their jobs if they were on the line. Steen and Generico, on the other hand, were clearly very well liked by the crowd and a very entertaining act. This was not the most entertaining match they've had in recent shows because it just was an opener that wasn't meant to be anything special other than like a showcase, but it was enjoyable enough.
Yeah, I agree about what this match was and the general quality. Like I was saying to start, being this like right after the Irish Airborne cut promo saying we need one more chance, and knowing that they only get this match, and then I think a match on the DVD exclusive portion of the Man Up pay-per-view taping. And that's it for them in the Gabe era of Ring of Honor. I thought it was interesting to view this match through that lens. Like, part of me wants to compare this match with their match the year before against the Briscoes at Death Before Dishonor 4, because both those matches are them getting big opportunities against top tag teams, and both turn out to be kind of nothing, not bad, but nothing special as matches. And after the Briscoes match, the Irish Airborne, they stayed around for quite a while, but it felt like their push died shortly after it. And this match, well, it's their first match in ROH after their Give Us One More Chance promo, and they only get one more match after this. But I think it's not a completely fair comparison, because that Briscoes match was given 15 minutes, and I felt like it was put in a position to try and be a great match, and it fell far short of it. It was only kind of decently good. And I could see Gabe looking at that match and thinking, if I give you 15 minutes with the Briscoes and you kind of hover around 3 stars, maybe 3.25, maybe I need to pump the brakes on your push a bit or completely. But this match, like you were saying, I didn't feel like it was put in a position to be that kind of match to steal the show or make a real big impression for Irish Airborne. It did get the opener spot, which is a good spot, and it was in front of their home area crowd who still like and cheer for them. And it was given 10 minutes, which isn't a lot of time, but it's an all right amount of time. But this match in the working felt, like you were saying, like it was less there to be a statement match and more just a warm-up for Steen and Generico before the pay-per-view the next night, another chance to establish their character act. And I would say they were working Steen and Generico. They're solid, like, B or B plus game here. Like they're not going nuts like they did with Quackenbush and Jigsaw the show before. But to be fair, and Irish Airborne aren't really, in my mind, on the level of workers of Mike Quackenbush and Jigsaw here either. And, this match starts a little slow. They ground Generico, which is fine. But one thing that kind of bugged me was like 30 seconds into this match, I think Jake has Generico in a chinlock or something, and he starts tapping his foot on the mat, trying to get the crowd clapping. And then Dave on the apron starts clapping on the turnbuckle, trying to get the fans clapping. And some fans do, but it was bizarre because normally when wrestlers encourage the crowd to clap like that, they're the ones in the hold tapping their foot to get like help support me as I fight out of this. And it's usually like during a mid-match lull. This was them applying the rest hold 30 seconds into the match, being like, "Come on, guys, get going for this chin." Like I was like, "What are you guys doing?" But it wasn't like, it was just bizarre.
Maybe Gabe saw the same thing you saw and got annoyed by it. Who knows?
He's just like, "Why are you asking for claps during a chinlock?" But there is a story to this match, but Irish Airborne are kind of inconsequential to it. Like Steen keeps getting annoyed, like you were saying that Generico doesn't have his killer instinct, and you really described it. I like when Jericho does the fake out dive, Steen gets pissed and does the real dive to the floor. Like I like the idea that Generico is a little more flashy and maybe a little, has a little bit of, doesn't quite have the eye of the tiger in that sense. He's a little too friendly and Steen's a little too much of an asshole. So, again, I think Steen and Generico, one thing that's really been nice about them so far in this Ring of Honor, the second run they had, is so far it feels like we've seen like a good handful of matches from them so far, and every match they find like different ways to show their dynamic. Like they're not, we're talking about, we always seem to pick out on all these reviews like 2 or 3 spots that are like, oh, that's totally their dynamic. But it seems so far, at least maybe they'll start repeating, so far it's like always been like slightly different. Like they're not just doing the same 2 or 3 things to show what their act is over and over again. So I would say that this is a match. This is decent. This is above average, but it's nothing special. It's most fun for the character work. They do give Irish Airborne some moments at the end to do some cool stuff, and Dave shines a bit. He does a real cool Fosbury flop to the floor. He hits Generico with this hammerlock backdrop driver that looks great, but overall, when you watch this match, I feel like you do kind of see why the Chris didn't stick in ROH. They're not bad. They're completely serviceable, and they can pop off some eye-catching moves, but they're missing that spark. And like I was talking about on the last show with, I think, Matt Cross, most acts in this first era of ROH, sooner or later, you need that signature. You got to buy the DVD to see the showcase match. And they never had it, the Irish Airborne, and they didn't have the characters or mic skills or intangibles to counter that. So yeah, like I also felt like when you were talking about like the stuff where Steen is mocking the Chris and going like, "Come on," when they're coming on, and the "you're not going anywhere" thing, like Steen's getting laughs and cheered for doing that because he's so entertaining. And I'm like, when you're doing that to the hometown baby faces and they're cheering you for doing that, I was like, that's maybe if I was them, I wouldn't feel great about that either. But yeah, anyway, next we join BJ Whitmer backstage, who says sometimes you have to wonder how much a man can mentally take. Last ROH weekend, he was fined his entire weekend's pay because of an incompetent referee. Tonight, he gets to take on BJ Albright just how he like. I said BJ Albright. Brett, see, Matt, that's a typo I would have caught if I knew the show was Saturday. But anyway, so he says tonight he gets to take on Brent Albright just how he likes it, with no rules.
Does that mean he's allowed to attack referees if there's no rules? Because isn't that what he got disqualified for?
Yeah, and he says tonight we get to find out not just how much a man can mentally take, but how much he can physically take. And then that brings us to our 5-man gauntlet match of Chris Hero, escorted to the ring by Larry Sweeney, and Tank Tolan defeated Adam Pearce with Shane Hagedorn, and Delirious and Jimmy Rave and Pele Primo in 22 minutes, 8 seconds. The falls went like this. Jimmy Rave defeated Pele Primo in 5:45 when he made him tap out to the heel hook. Delirious then pinned Jimmy Rave in a whopping 25 seconds when he pinned him with a Bizarro driver. Delirious then defeated Adam Pearce via pinfall in 3:59 with a roll-up. And then Chris Hero did whatever was the remaining time of the match. Cage match let me down here. Chris Hero defeated Delirious via pinfall after hitting the Hero's Welcome. So before the match even starts, when Pele Primo's making his entrance, he poses in the corner at ringside, and we can see Austin Aries tap on his chest. He is sitting in the front row. The announcers for this match, they acknowledge it later. They do not acknowledge it for this match. Before we even talk about the match, Matt, what'd you think about like spoiling? Because this was even in live reports. Like fans definitely commented and noticed on this. Like spoiler for the next show, the pay-per-view that is over a decade old, but Austin Aries returns to Ring of Honor on the next show and signs a contract in the ring on the pay-per-view. But like they just have him with no real like benefit sitting in the front row for this show. And I don't get why they didn't just save him for Saturday as a complete surprise.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It didn't serve really any purpose. Like it built the story, but yeah, like if you want to do something as a surprise, do it as a surprise. Like this, like if he's in the audience, it obvious and he interacts with like Carrie at one point later. Like it obviously gives everything away that it's an angle. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking here, but I agree with you. I do not think this was the move.
Yeah, and the other thing that I was thinking about, what's just weird about it, is when the announcers do talk about, like during a later part of the show, they mention, Austin Aries, he's, with TNA, he can't, he got pulled out, when all that stuff. And, but he just bought a ticket like anyone else. And I always thought that also sounds weird because when you think about, wrestling, like most of the times, if a wrestler like wants to go attend a wrestling show, they're usually people will invite them backstage. Like the idea that like Austin Aries would like, oh, I want to hang out at this Ring of Honor show. I'm gonna have to buy a ticket and be in the front row like that.
But like in order to get like a front row ticket, you probably have to be like one of like the super hyper vigilant art. Like those are probably the tickets that sold the fastest on those ROH shows back then because of the regulars, so I don't know, how would he have gotten that ticket? Like, I guess is my question.
Yeah, it's just a weird, like, it felt like in ROH usually doesn't do this, but just like doing a wrestling trope to do a wrestling trope. Like, oh, he bought a ticket to be here. It's like, there's no payoff on this night. There's nothing to it, but
I liked when they used to have like the $1 Million Man sit in the front row for matches, and he would come like buy the ticket from the fans sitting in the front row. I always appreciated that.
Yeah, at least that fan, probably got hopefully a good deal. So, at least everyone wins in that situation. But so this match was kind of weird to me because it takes up over 22 minutes. Yet it felt, to me, kind of slight and inconsequential. Like, we don't see a lot of gauntlet matches in ROH, but this felt like super typical B-show filler packaged in a different way than we're used to. Like, every match here is short, even the Hero Delirious one, because, again, that cage match stated time I said up top of 22 minutes and 8 seconds, that includes entrances between each fall for the next wrestler coming in. So, for the example of Hero and Delirious, I think they only actually get what amounts to a little over 7 minutes of match time, and they got, the longest here. And it's also kind of inconsequential in the booking. Like, gauntlet matches, when done a certain way, let you protect almost everyone in the match, because you look at this one. Pele loses in the first haul, but he's the rookie, so of course he can lose. Rave loses in the second, but he already worked a few minutes, so at least that gives him a tiny bit of cover, although he gets absolutely smoked by Delirious here. That was still one of those matches where I was like, wow, they're really kind of out on Jimmy Rave here. Then Pierce loses as a fresh man, but Delirious was basically fresh too because it took him no time to beat Jimmy Rave. Although I did like that on commentary they kept trying to sell how hot the building was and how it has no air conditioning as something that could still put Delirious as a disadvantage, even though he had only wrestled for like 30 seconds. Like I was like, I don't really buy it, but I appreciate you guys making the effort to try and like add stakes to this fall. And then also Pierce could lose quickly because he's getting repackaged soon. Anyway, and classic Gabe booking means, if you're going to repackage someone, you job them out like 8 times in a row because you just assume that the repackage will freshen them up and erase the stink of the losses. And then Delirious loses to a fresh man, Chris Hero, who is the third straight person he's had to wrestle. So again, it's kind of that like no-brainer, in a way, kind of unsatisfactory booking where everyone's protected, so the wins and losses don't really mean that much. In terms of the matches, I'll just go through them quick. Like, Rave Pele was fine. Rave gave Pele a lot of the offense, and this was a night where Pele's inexperience, I felt like, showed a little bit. Like, he hitched a bit on a couple of moves. He almost lost his tilt-a-whirl head scissors before he saved it, among other things. Then Rave gets more revenge for Pelly beating him in that multi-man, although he had already recently beaten him in a straight-up singles match, so now he's got like 2 revenge wins for the 1 loss. Rave Delirious was nothing, obviously. Delirious hit 5 clotheslines, although Prazak on commentary says 6. I went back, I think it's 5. And then he hit the Bizarro Driver for the win, with Rave getting literally 0 offense. Pierce Delirious was also very slight. It was short. Pierce fit in a lot of healing. I did like that they had Pierce go for a quick pin early, because I think due to it just being a gauntlet and Delirious just scoring a quick pin, fans would buy into the idea that maybe this fall could end on a quick pin too, but it didn't. And then Delirious and Hero was the best of the mini matches, but again, it was like 7 minutes. Delirious hid during Hero's elaborate entrance, and so Hero then crawls under the ring to try and find him. And while he's there, Delirious emerges and he hits Sweeney and Dempsey with a top rope dive to the floor. And I thought this match was all right. Like, I like Delirious breaking out a second rope bulldog. I think there should be more bulldogs in wrestling, British and otherwise. There was this weird moment where Delirious is hurt on the floor and Larry Sweeney helps him to his feet and then just calmly rolls him into the ring, doing nothing to him. And even Prazak on commentary is like surprised. But I think Lenny points out that maybe he planned on doing something heelish, but the ref turned around. And so mid pick up, he couldn't realize he couldn't do it, which is possible because the camera angle didn't show the ref very well. Hero also gets the win completely clean here, which is, a somewhat interesting choice. He hits the Hero's Welcome all of a sudden out of nowhere. Overall, I'd say this whole gauntlet was very slightly above average. I was not bored watching it, but it just felt extremely disposable, like the epitome of let's give the guys a semi-night off before the big show the next night.
I was bored by it, and I thought this is one of my least favorite things on an ROH TV in a long time. Like, I thought it was pretty lousy. I actually think that my favorite segment was Ray versus Primo, honestly. Like, yeah, there was a little bit of sloppiness, but it had energy. And yeah, it really was like a ton of Pele Primo offense. And he was fun. Again, still wasn't super experienced at this point, but he was fun. And obviously Rave got the win in the last second. And I enjoyed it for the most part. After that, though, I really didn't like anything. Ray versus Delirious was obviously nothing. Pierce versus Delirious, they definitely had better matches. Pierce was like totally pandering with the Repo Man thing, like basically begging them to chant it at him. So they did. Probably the best part of this match was when Pierce charged Delirious and Delirious backed up yelling, no, 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 with the beg off hand motion, and then dropped toe hold Pierce into the turnbuckle. So Prazak called it like the no, 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 drop toe hold or something. But yeah, totally nothing match, honestly. And then Delirious versus Hero. I mean, they could do so much better. This match was, I don't know, I'd say basically nothing. Like, it was just like a bland, like 2007 Raw TV match by these guys' standards. So I don't know. Like, I thought this, I don't want to say it sucked because like these are all good, competent wrestlers, but like by the standards of what they should be doing, it kind of sucked. And I'm surprised. Like, this is in 2003-ish era, they did gauntlets more often. And they were never great, but I thought they were all better than this. They didn't really seem to be trying hard with this one. None of the matches were meant to be like good. So it was just like, it really felt like total, like, let's kill some time, which I don't know. You expect more from ROH. So I'm thumbs down on this one.
Yeah. I mean, I liked it a little more than you, but I cannot argue with any of that. I guess the other thing I forgot to mention was Tank Tolan has a freaking huge cast or wrap on his arm on this night. Like, I don't know what he did between the last ROH show and this one, but it is like a gigantic wrap on his arm. He is clearly hurt and on the mend, hopefully. Well, obviously he's on the mend. I mean, I don't think this was a permanent injury, but immediately after the match, Hero puts Delirious in the Hangman's clutch, and, well, Sweeney laughs at him, but eventually he lets it go. Hero has Dempsey carry him to the back on his shoulders again, getting mad at him for not doing a good enough job of avoiding the ring post. Bobby ends up collapsing halfway to the curtain, and Tank yells at Bobby saying he's pathetic, so that, continues. And then that brings us to the no disqualification match. Brent Albright defeating BJ Whitmer via pinfall in 12 minutes, 50 seconds after he hit a crossbody through a table. Before the match, BJ gets in Ring of Honor owner Kerry Silkin's face at ringside screaming, "You want to fine me, my pay?" So I don't know if this is the first time, but this is one of the very rare times in this era that Kerry Silkin actually gets involved in an angle.
I am pretty sure this is the first time any wrestler has ever like got involved with Carrie and like messed with them. And I'm pretty sure Carrie responds by saying, "Don't be that guy," which I thought was very funny.
So Matt, did we learn the how much a man can take mentally and physically in this match, as BJ Whitmer promised us?
You mean how much I can take by having to watch it? Heyo.
Ooh, Matt is sassy tonight.
Yeah, no, I didn't think it was that bad or anything. But it was my least favorite of the Whitmer versus Albright matches that I've seen. Yeah, they worked. These guys always work hard. BJ always works hard in these matches. And they start off hot and heavy, which I appreciate. And they do that big suplex over the top rope, which is a move that Whitmer does very well. And they go right into the crowd, and they do their obligatory crowd brawl. There's a holy shit chant because Albright hits Whitmer with a full soda bottle that goes flying. And I feel like we're really lowering our standards for holy shit chants here. Like just hitting someone with a soda bottle. But yeah, they do a lot of like chucking each other into chairs, and it's weird this weekend to watch someone hit someone else with a flush chair shot to the head, given what was going on that weekend. But it did happen in this match.
Yeah.
And, the power bombs on the wooden floor and leather strap, which you don't see too often in ROH. So like the moves themselves were all fine, like good. They did a lot of stuff, but I'd say the pacing was just a little bit plodding, and the crowd wasn't really reacting that well. There was this part where BJ Whitmer hit a Tree of Woe double stomp, and I was like, well, he's not exactly low key. Like there's a spot where Albright pulls out a table, and it just takes a little more time than would be ideal. And then there's a spot, so they set up the table. Albright goes for the top rope superplex, but Whitmer gets him in the Tree of Woe. Then Whitmer hits that double stomp, and then Whitmer goes for a back suplex off the top, but Albright reverses it into a crossbody through the table and gets the win. I just thought that the finish was a little more complicated than they needed it to be. Took a little bit too much time to set up and didn't come across that great. So I appreciated the thought and the effort, but it didn't work out as well as it could have. And I thought that the match just wasn't that engaging, but I will not fault the effort. They definitely tried.
I like this match somewhat more than you. I don't know if Whitmer and Albright have decent chemistry, or if it's just that most of their matches against each other have been gimmick matches or brawls. But either way, they seem to avoid the meandering zone Albright matches can fall into sometimes. To me, I felt like this was a fun enough brawl. I don't know if I'd put it at a super high above average or a very low good, but what I describe it as is take a pretty middle of the road ROH mid-card brawl and just take it up one little notch. Like it was one notch above kind of what you've seen. Like you ain't maxing the knob on this one, but what makes it that little bit better to me?
Maxing the knob. Gotta think about that term for a bit.
Matt, some knobs go to 11, so Spinal Tap 2.
Yes.
The end continues in theaters now.
Are we getting? Are we sponsored by them? Because that'll be our first ever sponsor.
I hear that movie is somewhat disappointing, which breaks my heart. Anyway, so what makes it that? What I would say makes this match a little bit better. What makes it? You don't max the knob, Matt. Don't max the knob. But
we'll max the knob. I will not wax my knob. That's what you said, right?
Matt, never mind. So I actually thought what made this match decent was there was like a bit of roughness here, but in a good way. Like it follows the standard ROH brawl structure of quickly get out of the ring, get into the crowd, brawl there for the first half, get back to the ring for the second half. But there's stuff like Albright clotheslines Whitmer into the front row and goes over with him without like clearing the crowd first, which just felt slightly spicier than I'd expect. And there's also, the unprotected chair shots to the head, which I was exactly like you, like knowing that this show happens 2 days before the Benoit stuff. Like,
for the record, I think it might have been happening while the Benoit stuff was like going on, because didn't it happen over a couple days?
Oh yeah. So and we didn't know about the if this show happened on Friday, we didn't know about the Benoit stuff till like Monday. The nature. Monday, and then we didn't know the nature of it probably till like later, like
late Monday into Tuesdays when that started coming out. Yeah. Sunday was just like he missed the pay-per-view and what's going on. Yeah.
So but like you watch, it's like I always felt like ever I saw unprotected chair shots, I knew they weren't good for people, and I wasn't always happy with. But like this was, I remember watching this right now. I was like looking back and going like, this was probably like the last chair shot I could look at and not feel like really gross about watching it.
Yeah.
Because definitely that changed things where it made it even more like, especially for the first, I think, few years after that, on the instances you did see someone still do an unprotected chair shot, your mind instantly went to one place after that. And, it was just a horrible, not the best place for your mind to go when you're trying to have a good day. And you were talking about, them hitting each other with drink bottles and how, why, the fans going crazy over, hey, some people take getting hit with drink bottles, really seriously, like, Rajah Jackson, but.
Wow, Trevor, you made me feel like a real piece of shit. Thanks.
Matt, there's nothing I want to do more than date an episode of the podcast immediately before it even comes out with a reference that will, be forgotten quickly. But
I don't know if that one will be forgotten so quickly, but anyway, yeah.
So, they get back to the ring. They break out a strap. I'm always a fan of a good strapping. I'm always down to get a strap on that, between Max and the knobs and getting your strap on. And like you, I was like surprised that Whitmer did the Tree of Woe double stuff. And like you, I was like, oh, this is I appreciated that he made the effort to do it. I was kind of surprised, but I was also like you, this is not low key quality, because I think the difference is when low key does the Tree of Woe double stomp, he like jumps real high in the air and really
and he lifts his knees to his chest and like brings them down. Yeah.
Yeah. Where I would describe the BJ Whitmer Tree of Woe double stomp as he basically doesn't jump. He basically walked and fell off the turnbuckle.
Yes.
Which I was like, you know what? Still, you're trying something outside your comfort zone. Good for you, sir. But we also continued in this match the Whitmer is frustrated storyline as he gets mad at a ref yet again for what he perceives as a slow count. And even the finish where Whitmer is going to suplex Brent off the top turnbuckle through a table, but Albright turns it into a cross by through the table on the way down. I felt like that was a good finish for the story because it was almost like, it feels like Whitmer is grabbing defeat out of the jaws of victory yet again. Like he was just on the verge of winning. The guy shifts his momentum and now he's lost. And so I thought that was a good finish for it. If we're talking about things that are make you uncomfortable but also make you laugh, Matt, I'll join you in this episode, because watching the show, I noticed, and this is such a horrible, stupid thing, when Albright gets suplexed in the crowd, he lands near a chair that has a fan's handmade sign sitting on it, and so I paused just to see what, like, it's rare fans bring signs to the Ring of Honor, so what did this fan do? And the sign said, and I quote, "If you read this, you are gay." And Matt, as I'm saying this, I realize that has a reference to something that's happening in the news this week, and I didn't realize that until I started to say it. And let's move on. This is what is this episode? See, Matt, this is how much I don't get prep. This is what happens when the episodes go crazy. But
do I have to edit that out too?
You know what? Go for it. But
okay, if you want,
no, we don't have to. You know what? We don't have to. You know what?
You're just reading something you just read something that you saw on the DVD we're reviewing.
Yeah, this show predicted everything. But anyway, the last thing I want to say about this match,
oh my God,
was this is harmless. BJ does you mentioned how DJ did the suplex my opponent over the ropes to the floor, and I go over with the top ropes with you spot. And have you noticed that, like, we just saw Davey Richards do it, and I think BJ also did it once more recently? Like, all of a sudden it feels like, was this the moment where, like, that move really became in vogue? Because it feels like all of a sudden we've seen it, like, 3 times in a handful of shows.
Yeah, I mean, you can go back to, like, the 80s and probably earlier and see that move, but what I like about the way Whitmer does it is the way he, like, flips all the way over, like, vertically when he goes out. Like, I think it looks really cool when he does it.
See, I don't really love that move because from a kayfabe standpoint, it doesn't make sense because it never looks like the person giving the move doesn't take as much, if not more, of a bump than the person taking it. Like, it always feels why do you even try that?
I always thought of it as the idea was that the person giving the move went over by accident. That's how I always take that move. And I'm serious. Like, I always take it as like the guy meant to suplex the other guy outside, but the momentum carried him over too.
Matt, that's just not good ring awareness. That's just Gorilla Monsoon be rolling over in his grave. Actually, I don't think There was an announcer who was always about ring awareness. It was not Gorilla Monsoon.
Gorilla Monsoon wanted you to hook the leg.
Yeah, exactly.
And the irony is that Vince McMahon wouldn't let the wrestlers hook the leg if it wasn't the finish. So Gorilla Monsoon was just like criticizing guys for doing things they were not allowed to do. And then so many years later, when CM Punk became a Ring of Honor commentator, he would criticize guys for not hooking the leg because he grew up learning from Gorilla Monsoon, who was trying to get himself over. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I think that he brought that over. He and Prazak used to do that on IWA Mid-South shows. They would almost sarcastically
hook the leg, man.
Yeah, exactly. That exact cadence. And yeah, like that is the go-to anecdote Dave Meltzer always gives when like people are like, I can't believe people thought Gorilla Monsoon wasn't a good announcer. He always said like, I think Dave even mentioned this again on Twitter recently. Like, he was like, you have no idea that like wrestlers hated him for that because they felt like he was making them look stupid for doing something that they weren't allowed to do. And
yes, so I mean, there's two sides to the story. Like, yes, probably for the wrestler's standpoint, he was not a good announcer at getting them over the way they wanted to, but he was very entertaining. And and like a lot of those WWF matches back then were boring as shit. So like Gorilla bouncing off some heel was the most entertaining part of the show, and it made the shows worth watching. Like, go watch WrestleMania 4 and tell me that and 5 and tell me that the commentary wasn't like literally the best part of the show.
No, like I'm a person that can see both sides because I can see the arguments for why he was not technically a good announcer, but at the same time, I agree with you that like he was fun, and I am one of those people where I can't be completely objective because he was part of my childhood. He was like one of the first announcers I grew up with.
No, he was definitely like this idea of like the announcer having like a dad quality, and I don't think that's true at all anymore. Maybe Tony Schiavone, I guess, but like there are no other announcers where it's like, yeah, I bet a kid could listen to this guy and just see if he like it's a fatherly figure,
Yeah, I always like on Thanksgiving on the Survivor Series, he's always like, settle down with dinner and watch the show, and like he always made it seem like someone else is trying to make everything seem like this is the biggest exciting event the world's whatever, and Gorilla was like just like he was like just telling you like get your snacks, get your pop situated, like get under the blanket, like it was definitely cozy, and
yes.
But
I cannot imagine any kid growing up feeling that way about Michael Cole. I don't even think Michael Cole's bad. Like, some people think he's really bad. I don't think he's bad, but like, I even kids who grew up with him, like, I just can't imagine it being the same.
Yeah, and he has had chemistry with some people, but like there's never, for a guy who's been around that long, I mean, other than maybe you could argue the Taz pairing, I don't know if he's had like a really iconic partnership either, which I don't know for a guy that's been around that long where you just go, wow, that it's not just this guy, it's this guy and this guy.
Yes, no, it's true, and I did like the early 2000s Cole and Taz commentary team. I think that's when Cole was at his best on commentary, and probably the best stuff he ever had to work with. All those all the stuff with Angle and the SmackDown 6 and Benoit and stuff and Lesnar. Like, I think that was probably a great era to call. But point being, like, it's not just that he grew up with Gorilla. Like, there was something to him that made him comforting that other announcers wouldn't have. It's true of Jim Ross too, but I don't think it's true of modern announcers that came after them.
Although I will say a couple things. One, even though we're way off topic here, one thing I'll say is I remember as a kid, like, the heels are always wrong and always liars. I remember, this was a little before my time, but when I got into wrestling, I quickly caught up watching like all the Jesse and Ventura Gorilla era WWF pay-per-views on VHS tape. The wonders of physical media comes full circle. But I remember, like, it was the first time as a wrestling fan, there would be some of those arguments that Jesse and Gorilla got into where I'd be like, I think Jesse's right. Like it would make me feel like morally conflicted because like Gorilla wasn't always the best at like arguing things, and Jesse really was. So it'd be sometimes it's like looking back, like the face should be winning this argument, but I'm like, I actually think Jesse's winning the debate here just on like competence of like talking, and And the other thing with the Taz Cole thing, not to denigrate Michael Cole too much, but I did enjoy that commentary team. But I think my measure of it does go down a little bit with like now that we see the Excalibur Taz team, where it's like, oh, Taz just likes to bullshit with like a lot of people. Like he has a similar chemistry. Like you could probably put him not with everybody, but like a certain percentage of the populace, and Taz would have a similar kind of chemistry. It seems like just because he likes being that kind of announcer. If you're willing to riff with him, you'll get into that zone.
Yes, fair point.
But anyway, with all that being said, let's get back to the show. We then go to Nigel. Oh wait, let me just see here. I forgot the important post-match match of B.J. Whitmer and Brett Albright. After the match, Whitmer gets checked on by a bunch of refs and students, and then he is down for a long time after the table spot at the end of the match. When he finally gets up, he starts tossing refs around before exploding, I believe, Mitch Franklin, fresh off his win over John Moxley. And then he goes outside and he tosses a chair, homicide style. So the B.J. Albright is snapping, getting pissed off, losing streak. Story continues. We then go to Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson's backstage, and Nigel tells Bryan that the only reason that he's teaming with him tonight is so he can get his hands on Morishima. Bryan says the only reason he's teaming with Nigel tonight is the same damn thing. Bryan tells Nigel he doesn't want any nonsense between them, no headbutting each other today. They both have the same goal, winning the ROH World title. Bryan says, let's get it done, and the two shake hands. This might be for the image of the show just because it was like, Nigel could not seem taller in the way they framed this shot, and Bryan could not seem shorter. It was wild. But I guess I'll talk about more later. But I like the way they treated their partnership on this night. Is what I'll say for now.
Yes,
but,
I agree. And it's funny because like they mentioned the headbutt thing because this is right after the match when they headbutt each other. But of course, it airs right before the show where that match airs. Like it's kind of weird. But yes, I appreciated the dynamic too.
It's also interesting, like how many of basically the story of their entire feud is we like to headbutt each other, or like because the headbutt thing started at Unified, and then it'll come into play. They reference it here. It comes into play on the next night, like you just said, Driven, the pay-per-view, and then there's the 6th anniversary show, which is all about like agreeing not to headbutt each other, and then Nigel breaking that promise. So like, I watching this, I was like, I forgot there was this, like the headbutt was this much of a theme. Where even like on an off B show, it was like, let's not do our thing tonight. Our thing. It's headbutting.
Yeah.
But
and by the way, I wish you could hear the block party going on outside. They are just blasting Karma Chameleon. So, Trevor, I just want to tell you, you're my lover, not my rival. And that's what Bryan and Nigel were saying to each other right here.
See, unfortunately, I can't hear it. I would not be opposed to a very faint Karma Chameleon playing in the background of the show. We will add that in post-production. We will not add that in post-production. But that brings us to the No Remorse core of Davey Richards and Roderick Strong defeating the Resilience of Eric Stevens and Matt Cross in 12 minutes, 4 seconds when Strong pinned Stevens after a Gibson driver. For the first half of this match, I was worried I was going to have nothing to talk about because it's another, in a theme here, kind of a match we've seen a million times before in the middle of an ROH mid-card. Same pace, same structure, same length. I have a lot of the same talking points, like Davey Richards is a really good stooging asshole heel at this point in his career. Matt Cross is a real good athlete, but he's missing some ring presence and charisma at this point in his career. But then Eric Stevens at one point, he lifts Davey up in this inverted wheelbarrow position, and Matt Cross jumps off the top turnbuckle to double stomp him in the back, and it's fucking awesome. And the crowd, which was very mid-level in terms of the reaction for this match, they perk up for that one moment. There's like this audible injection of energy into this match. And then, as is usually the case in these matches, the next few minutes, which are the last few minutes of the match, are all big moves and fast-paced action. And it's about as cool, I felt like, as the Resilience has felt in a few shows. Like, it wasn't some wild stretch run you've never seen before, but to me, it was a reminder where sometimes wrestling is just about hitting cool moves. Like, I am a person who likes slower matches with more intangibles, who does like fast spot-based matches, but also feels like we get too many of them now in wrestling. But at the same time, when you're breaking into a new company and you're trying to win over fans, cool moves, fast-paced action, that's often your best bet. Like, people can say, I think you see this a lot, these rookies today don't know how to work. Look how the veterans get big reactions doing so much less. But the veterans get big reactions doing less in part because they're veterans and they're already stars. And the fans always will have more patience watching their matches because they already know those wrestlers. They've already are invested in them. They have faith that whatever slow parts will pay off by the end of the match. Up and comers don't have that relationship with the fans. Like, no fan is going to be like, I don't know who Eric Stevens was before tonight, but his grasp of the fundamentals and his basic selling has really got me jazzed. Like, but they might go away from this match if they've never seen those guys before and go, holy shit, did you see that wheelbarrow double stop? Like, that was rad that those guys did that. So I know you want mid-card guys sometimes to not overshadow main events or risk burning out crowds early in the show. And I know Gabe told newsletters that he was planning on not pushing the Resilience guys too strong out of the gate because he was worried that a quick push would get fans to resent them. But what they really could have used at this point in their run was just a few matches that were like the final few minutes of this match where you just did it for the whole match, where just send them out there, say you got 15 minutes, do every single cool move you know how to do, hold nothing back. Like, I would call this match overall like a low good. It's kind of like the Whitmer Albright match where it's something you've seen loads of before ROH, but it's a notch better in those final minutes. And again, I felt like those final few minutes were a peek into this world where the Resilience is maybe not necessarily doing great in Ring of Honor, but probably would have more buzz than they actually did at this point if they just did more matches that was more of just do your spots, bro. You know, stuff like that.
I actually liked this match more than you. I thought it was quite good. I thought it was actually the best match of this Resilience versus No Remorse Core feud so far. Even the early part of the match, I think, had more energy than usual. Even though, it was similar stuff. Just Davey was really on point with his healing. I think the crowd was just more engaged than usual. And Cross and Strong have like a very pretty fast-paced exchange. I think Richards works well with both of them. I think one of the big differences in this match, I thought Stevens has looked impressive on a few occasions. I think this is the first match where Cross felt like he got over pretty well and seemed more than just a couple moves. Like, he just did more than usual and was faster than usual. And I think everyone was on point tonight. And yeah, like you said, there was a bunch of cool moves near the end when they started doing the hot tag stuff. You mentioned the Richards going for the handspring kick, but Stevens catching him around the waist and holding him so Cross could leap off the top of the double stomp to the back of Richards' head. And then another really convoluted but cool spot, which was Cross going up to the top, and Stevens goes to lift up Richards, but Richards flips out of his back, avoids Stevens like under his legs or around him, and then runs up the rope for a German suplex on Cross onto Stevens. I thought that was a really cool spot. I thought the space flying tiger drop by Matt Cross came off really well, just really well timed. I thought that the throw up power slam on Strong followed by Stevens. Immediately followed by Richards hitting a missile dropkick to the back of Stevens' head, and then Richards going for the running forearm in the corner, and then a sudden dive onto Cross, and then Strong immediately hit Stevens with the sick kick and the Gibson driver. I just thought like the pace and everything clicked so well here that and the reactions were great. So I actually really like this a lot. And it's the first time really in this feud where I'm like, okay, this is this all came off really well.
Yeah, like even if you like the match a bit more than me, like I think we can both agree. Like there was a moment here where it was like, okay, I could see something for the Resilience here, like, and I don't think even in the matches where we like, oh, this is a decent match from the Resilience, or oh, there was a moment they look good. I don't think there's been a match quite like this where there's like a sustained bit where you're like, oh, they're kind of getting some momentum at least on this night for a bit. I guess that one night when Eric Stevens came in and he had like the four corners match and then he was in the elimination match and he got eliminated first. I think that night was a really good night for him, but
for him,
like a tag
for
team.
For him, yeah. But like not for this combination of wrestlers.
Yeah. So After the match, Roddy grabs a mic and he tells Stevens across, this is like the 34th time they've beaten them up. He says, aren't you getting tired of it? Maybe you can run and hide like your former leader did. And at that moment, Roddy points to Aries in the audience. Roddy says he likes that after raising some hell somewhere else, Austin starts bitching and whining that he wants to come back here. Roddy says that Aries can't come back because Roddy's running things now. Aries gets pissed, and for the second time in the night, Kerry Silken gets involved in an angle because Kerry Silken walks over to Aries to calm him down as the crowd starts chanting Austin Aries. Cross complains that Roddy's acting like a tough guy now when he knows Aries can't do anything. Gabe Sapolsky then comes from the back to try and calm Roddy down, and he walks with Roddy to the back. And I love that in ROH, you only ever see Gabe when something has either gone legitimately horribly wrong or when he wants you to think that something has gone legitimately horribly wrong. And usually the line between those two is very thick and clear. Despite the fact that he sometimes he is coming out when something's really horribly wrong, like when he's coming out when something isn't horribly wrong, you're always like, oh, this is clearly fake.
Yes.
But, again, we kind of talked about the Aries thing before. I do think it was interesting. I thought, that's a little spicy when how Roddy framed it as like, you raised hell in TNA and now you're bitching to come back here. Like he was almost framing it as like, you screwed up there, got people pissed off at you and now you want to come back, which is, like as a heel, it's almost like, I could see some fans, I don't think by and large fans felt that way. They were happy to see Aries back, but you could definitely, if you wanted to make that case, right? That like, would Aries have come back if like he wasn't kind of like on the outs with TNA for various things? So I thought it was interesting that he kind of slipped that framing in as the heel here. It is now intermission. And Rebecca Bayless is backstage with Sweet and Sour Incorporated, which is Larry Sweeney, Chris Hero, Bobby Dempsey working on Resistance Band, and Tank Tolan with the big old cast. Sweeney won't stop laughing. Larry says he always has $1 million smile, but there's a little extra oomph behind it tonight. He has some big news. After many battles with the bureaucrats, Chris Hero has signed his ROH contract. Chris says the holdout is over and he beat 5 other men tonight. Actually, he only beat 4. Yeah, there was a 5-man thing and he was one of the men.
Also, he only beat 1.
Yeah. Tank does 5 squats to celebrate. Hero starts his own Chris is awesome chant. Larry says when you sign with Larry Sweeney, you get nothing but the best. He then has Bobby Dempsey doing jumping jacks. And look at the news. That was a shoot about, like, I think this weekend was the weekend Chris Hero signed his contract with Ring of Honor. That at least made the newsletters at this time. So, he took a little extra time, but he signed his contract. And that brings us to the first match after intermission, the women's match. Lacey, scored to the ring by Jimmy Jacobs, defeated Serena Deeb via pinfall in 6 minutes, 10 seconds after she hit the implant DDT. Matt, we saw the epic 10-minute draw, very rarefied air for the women in Ring of Honor, and now they're right back to kind of where we expect them to be, which is like first match after intermission, which is often like a low-level match because, like, hey, fans still might be getting merch or a slice of pizza, and you get 6 minutes. So what'd you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was too short to do anything, but I think Deeb did well with the time that she got. The crowd was into her. Lacey was talking trash about how she doesn't know who she is, and like to the crowd who was chanting for her, is like, you know who she is. But I think Serena was like aggressive here, and she even did the Alex Shelley skull fuck, which I guess she must have done a lot at this point, but I guess I didn't just watch enough of her to know that. But she like screamed after some big offense. Lacey does some hair-based offense, including a bulldog type move, but with her holding Serena by the hair instead of a headlock. And of course we get Jimmy smoking a cigarette and Jimmy blowing smoke into Deeb's face. Shades of, what was that, Roddy Piper and Morton Downey Jr.? But was that what they were referencing here? But yeah, I mean, the match wasn't much, but I really did think that Deeb looked well. Like, Deeb did well. Look, she did look well, but she did well here.
You just become an old grandfather. You look well, honey.
Yeah, so
there's a lot of rosiness in your cheeks.
Yeah, she did. She did not seem like she had a cold. But yes, I know. I enjoyed the match. I obviously then Rain showed up, and I don't remember how much comes of Rain's involvement here. But yeah, short, not very dramatic, heel finish. But I actually was surprised we didn't see more of Serena Deeb after this because I thought she did look quite well.
Yeah, I believe I believe this basically sets up, I think it's a Minnesota Home Wrecking Crew tag on the DVD portion of the next show. So, just a very basic, Rain was probably in for the weekend. The ROH women's division at this point was 3 women. It was Lacey, Sarah Del Rey, and Daisy Hayes, and whatever local woman was needed to work one of them on a given show. And although that sounds like criticism, I actually think for ROH at this point, that was actually kind of a step forward for where the division had been at points. And I agree that Serena Deeb was quite well here. She was the designated local woman of the day for the show, and I thought she looked good in the ring. Like, she had some nice, fun, urgent, targeted arm work in the opening minute. She had, like you point out, she had really, I thought, good fire and energy, especially when she made her comebacks. I thought she had good facial expressions at the moment when she was selling. And you can start to see the transition women's wrestling on like the US indie scene was going through, because I feel like the median one of these like 6-minute random ROH, I guess we'll do one of these women's matches, is getting better. Like the base ability of the women, even the quality in these slight 5-6 minute matches, it's going up a bit. You can see that everything's getting better. Is everything here executed like absolutely crisply and beautifully? No, but like nothing is not pulled off either. For Lacey, this really was, just more of a chance to heal. You point out the bulldog she did off the second turnbuckle, where she didn't have Deeb in a hairlock, but just slammed her head by the hair. I thought that looked really vicious. I like that. And, again, maybe I just really like second rope bulldogs, because I liked both of them on this show. And then, we get the interference where Jimmy Jacobs smokes and blows the smoke into Serena's face behind the ref's back. And if that's not enough, like you mentioned, Rain, Lacey's regular tag team partner, came in for the very WWE-esque distraction finish. Like, I'll just say, like, my expectations for ROH's handling of a women's division is so low that I found myself with things to be happy about from a 6-minute match with multiple instances of interference. I was like, well, that's still good by ROH standards. Like, hey. Yes. So lowered expectations. That's what people that know me have to learn to live with. But after the match, Rain celebrates with Lacey and taps her ass like a fellow football player, like, just good job, and the butt tap, and I thought that was funny. And then the two stomp deep until Daisy Hayes runs in. She chops the heck out of both of the heels. She's about to finish Lacey off when Jimmy grabs her leg, which allows Lacey to escape. So Hayes consoles herself by hitting Rain with the mind trip in the ring. Jimmy holds an angry Lacey back on the floor. So we're setting up for a tag match the next night. And then that brings us to the first of our big 3. I don't know if they ever build this as a triple main event, but clearly this is a card where there's 3 matches on top that are way over and above in what you're looking forward to than anything else. And the first of these is Kenta defeating Rocky Romero via pinfall in 18 minutes, 43 seconds after he hit a go to sleep. Early on in this match, Dave Prazak notes on commentary that Davey Richards isn't at ringside, and being Kenta's American protege, he wonders where he stands. So that may come into play, but Kenta gets this huge reaction coming out. Like Kenta is almost always very over in ROH, but on this night, this crowd is super dang into it. Like, he might have been the most over person on the show. Like, Dayton, Ohio was for some reason Kenta country.
Well, was this his debut in Kenta and Dayton? That might be what it is.
I'm not sure. My memory for this stuff is horrible, but this crowd was.
I feel pretty confident this was his debut in Dayton.
I thought this was an interesting matchup stylistically, as both guys are known for hard strikes, particularly kicks, and I felt like they worked the opening how you'd want to see it, unique to their matchup, because it's basically a stand-up striking battle in the opening minutes with just this hellacious battle of slaps to the face even. And then one of the more interesting parts of this match is in the first 5 minutes, Kenta doesn't just lose on most of the exchanges, he loses on most of the striking exchanges. Like, in Ring of Honor, Kenta is pushed so strongly, you don't see him losing out on wrestling exchanges very often, like this in general in ROH, let alone battles of just, I'm going to hit you real hard, and Rocky winning out on him. In fact, I would say in general in this match, Kenta gives Rocky what I'd call a slightly surprising amount of offense in this match. Kenta takes his share, but I would say Rocky got a little more than I would expect him to get. Kenta was fairly generous with him here. And, I'd say actually Rocky takes more of this match than Kenta does. this match just, I felt like a nice flow between kicks and then Rocky busting out some cool submissions and then some bigger wrestling, end of match US indie spots, like DDT variations. Rocky does a big dive to the floor. And this is one of those matches where I enjoyed it quite a lot and it had no super glaring flaws to me, but at the same time, I rate it at very good and not quite great. It is just at that level to me. Like it's not Kenta by the numbers. There's enough fun wrinkles here to make this match feel like more than that to me. And it doesn't feel like they're putting in a B-show significant step back performance. Like maybe Kenta's taking just a little bit off the top, but it also doesn't just quite hit that level of being super special. And that's okay. Like, especially on a B show, like sometimes there are matches like this where I'd rate it, if I had to give it a star rating, like 3 3/4 stars, where I was like, they were aiming for 3 3/4 stars. They hit it, and exactly, and on like the third match from the top on a B show, I'm perfectly happy with a 3 3/4 star match. Like I there are a lot of times where a match like hits that and I'm like, oh, it was so close to being great, and there was some flaw or something they kind of missed, and it was clear they were going for it. I didn't get that feeling. I felt like this was exactly what they wanted it to be, and it was very good. And I will say, finally, at the end, one of the things that I really loved about this was I thought the finishing sequence was so good here. I loved Rocky counters the go to sleep into a crucifix, and then out of the crucifix, Kenta grabs an arm bar out of that. And I love that he did that against, Rocky Romero, who is Mr. Armbar, the guy who in fact hit him with the big Diablo armbar early in the match. And then the next thing I loved was Rocky immediately counters that armbar with an armbar of his own. Like, I loved how easy it was for him, where it was like, look, I'm the armbar guy. You're going to try and do that to me? Like, I'm going to be out of this in a second and putting you in it. And then I love that, and then that obviously that sets up the finish, which is Kenta does a legitimately really damn impressive deadlift while he's in the armbar to herk Rocky all the way up onto his shoulders, hit the go to sleep, which is something I'm sure Kenta's done multiple times in his career. But to me, this was one where it looked really great. Like I was like, wow, you are deceptively strong. And I thought that was just a great finish. And I enjoyed this match.
We are in the hand-holding club here. I feel like you said basically everything I would have said. I thought that it was surprising how much of an equal Romero got to come across with Kenta. I thought that they really complemented each other's styles well with the strikes and the arm bars. I thought the finish was fantastic. Like, just one of the best finishes I've seen in a while, both on the show and even just compared to what I've watched in current wrestling recently. Super well worked, pretty stiff, good, not like so fast paced, and like the emotions weren't super high that it became like so memorable, but just like a super well worked match. I also really dated itself in 2007 when Kenta put the camel clutch on Romero, the crowd chanted "Make him humble." Always dating themselves with that one. But yeah, I just thought this was like just a really nice, professional, well-done match between two guys that had a style that complemented each other, and Kenta was generous enough to let Romero come off as somebody that could hang with him in a one-on-one match, and I think that really made the match. And I thought this was definitely better than the last singles Kenta match we saw with him against Delirious. I like this one a lot.
Yeah, this was a lot more interesting. And I noticed the make him humble thing too. And I always like to point out, the camel clutch is probably not in the top 10 moves you think of when you ask someone to think of a Kenta, what moves does Kenta do? But I always liked his camel clutch. I felt like he really cranked on it in a way that some wrestlers didn't. And I always appreciate that about him. Like, oh, you got like a pretty tight camel clutch. So after the match, Davey Richards walks into the ring and applauds Kenta. Dave Prazak on commentary, Bobby Heenan style, asks whose side is Davey on. Davey helps Kenta up to his feet and then does the same for Rocky as the crowd chants ROH. Kenta and Rocky shake hands, and Davey encourages the crowd to give both of them a round of applause before he raises Kenta's hand and kicks him in the chest. He and Rocky stomp him until they're chased out of the ring by Delirious, Eric Stevens, and Matt Cross. I actually thought they did a really good job of making the post-match long enough that it went from it being incredibly obvious that Davey was going to turn on Kenta, that for like a half second I was like, they're going so long with the celebration here, which, you don't know that from just my recap, but it went for quite a while that I'm like, it almost felt like the crowd maybe was even starting to think like, oh, maybe he is just going to like be like, hey, cheer for my two friends. They just had a very good match. Because like he just it was almost like it was to me it was like, I don't know if you felt this way. It was like the reverse of the old WWE NXT takeover trick where like, they do the takeover thing where the show's about, you see the credits for takeover and the show's about to end. And then all of a sudden, a wrestler turns on another, a shocking angle happens. And it turns out we've got like another 3 to 4 minutes.
Yeah. They just did that in AEW Forbidden Door last month, as a matter of
fact.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's really neat the first once or twice you do it, but then once you've seen it a couple times and they keep going back to it, you go, well, if you're sticking around and lingering on this moment so long, I know there's about to be a turn. I felt like this was the reverse where it's like, you're lingering on this moment so long, maybe this is just the moment. Like I was almost thinking Davey's going to come in and turn on him immediately. And he just kind of kept going, like helping them up, raising the hands, asking the cheer, pointing to them. So yeah, decent, post-match angle. I don't know if you had any thoughts.
No, that's a good point. Like I also was like doubting at certain points. Like, is he going to do the turn? I didn't, because obviously I didn't remember. And yeah, like they let it linger so long that you kept. But he is. No, he's not. Well, is he? Well, maybe he's not. Like, so I think that's a really good point. That really made it more effective.
And then that brings us to the semi-main event. Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness defeated Naomichi Marufuji and Takeshi Morishima in 24 minutes, 14 seconds when Nigel pinned Morishima after a jawbreaker lariat. Matt, we had just kind of seen we had just seen a match with 3 of these 4 wrestlers. The main event of Respect is Earned. We got kind of that vibe of like a dream partners tag match. And now we see another one. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, well, first of all, although this was not the top match of the last match of the show, this was the main event. This was the cover of the DVD. Like, obviously, this was the main event. ROH is good about like, okay, like we have a tag team title match, we're gonna make that the main event, but over a match with no title on the line. But this was the main event, and yeah, I mean, obviously, the obvious comparison is to Kenta and Nigel against Danielson and Morishima from Respect is Earned. And that match was freaking awesome. This match didn't quite hit those levels, but I will say it's better than I remembered. And like, it just made me think like this isn't a top tier match between these guys, but man, these are just such freaking great wrestlers, like they're just so good. So it was so hard for them not to have a match that was just really fantastic at points. And overall, I'd say very good. The story here was Danielson and McGuinness coexisting. And what I liked about it is they did not do the normal stupid tropes of they can't coexist. They just coexisted. They just did tag team moves together. They worked their asses off. They didn't have any animosity in the middle of the match. They didn't even have any animosity after the match. They just worked like hell and had a great match. And like they came up with like Danielson holding up Marufuji, or kind of assisting Nigel in doing the Tower of London on Marufuji, stuff like that. And everyone just worked their ass off. Nigel, I think, was actually the standout to me here. He just was really on point here, where he did like fast-paced cradles, which we usually don't see. There was a point where he did a cradle on Morishima early in the match, and he did an O'Connor roll where he like tried to do like a full bridge back, and like it was a struggle for him to get the bridge, and I think that made it even cooler and made the crowd pop more when Morishima kicked out. It almost felt like a believable near fall, like almost like just a couple minutes into the match, and I really like that. We also got our first example of Morishima against Danielson, and it looked really good. Morishima was throwing Danielson around ringside. There was a spot where Bryan was working over Morishima's leg, but Morishima just shrugged it off and knocked Danielson down with one forearm. There was really cool stuff between Marufuji and Danielson, who have pretty good chemistry together. There were some later in the match, they did their whole like roll up sequence that they've done before. There was a spot where Morishima in the corner stood on Danielson's throat, and Marufuji got on Morishima's back, adding his extra weight onto Danielson. And I ask, Trevor, how do you work a thing like that?
Yeah, like I sometimes I guess maybe if you're standing like if you're holding the ropes, maybe you can lean more of your weight on the rope. But yeah, it doesn't.
Still,
Yeah.
that's still hundreds of pounds coming on down on you. Um, but yes, obviously, yes, they did use the ropes. Marufuji even does some cool submissions. There's a spot where he puts his legs on Danielson's arms and like pulls him up by like his arms and then pulls down on Danielson's neck and head. And it looked extremely painful until McGuinness broke it up. I thought Nigel's first hot tag was really good. He starts hitting lariats. He super kicks Marufuji coming out of midair. There's there's a spot where Morishima gets tagged in, then starts turning it on, hitting the cartwheel avalanche. He and then there was like the one I think really awkward spot of the match that took it down a little bit. I don't know if you remember this. Morishima, after he hits the cartwheel avalanche, he hits the ropes, and I think he expects Nigel to pop back up. But Nigel stayed down selling, and so Morishima just stops and just like yells, "Come on!" and like almost throws a little tantrum. Did you notice that spot?
Yeah, I thought there was a couple moments in this match of miscommunication between them, and that was like almost like I was shocked because that was almost like HBK Morishima there because like
Yes.
instead of just like improvising or like let's move on to the next spot, like yeah, like you just said, he screamed. He seemed like in a moment for a brief moment like legitimately angry. He screams at Nigel for Nigel not getting up the mat for not being off of the mat when he expected him to be, and then he just screams at him and then runs the ropes. Nigel quickly gets up and they do what I imagine was the spot he had planned on doing, but it was like he almost had like a 5-second tantrum.
Yes,
but
it
like
did. And the fact that he, as some people have said, looked kind of like a big baby makes it even more tantrum-esque. But but yeah, no, they this is we get into like the hot move sequence of the match, which too much to even go through. But I get there's a spot where Danielson helps Nigel hit the Tower of London. There's also a spot where Marufuji goes for the Shiranui on Danielson, but Nigel is able to like catch Danielson so he doesn't go over. I thought that was cool. There was a spot where Marufuji leaps off of Morishima's back into a leg lariat on McGuinness. There's a spot where Morishima goes for a super backdrop driver off the ropes on McGuinness, but Danielson comes over and shoves Morishima all the way to the floor, which allows McGuinness to dive off the top rope onto Morishima. And then Morishima tries to throw Nigel back in, but Nigel hits that rebound lariat on the outside, which I like more than the one on the inside. I always like that spot. And at that point, you see like Morishima kind of busted his nose a little bit. The announcers pointed out. Then we get a spot where Nigel locks Morishima in a half crab, and Danielson simultaneously puts Marufuji in the cattle mutilation, which is a cool spot. Later on, the Morishima is he's attempted to be double suplexed by McGuinness and Danielson, but instead he suplexes both of them. And then there's a spot where Morishima knocked Danielson into the Tree of Woe, and Marufuji immediately pops up with a coast-to-coast dropkick, which might have been my favorite spot of the match, just the way that was timed. And that's when Nigel takes the advantage and hits Morishima with the Tower of London. Marufuji breaks that up. And I actually, at that point, thought that was the finish. They really got me on that one. And then Danielson and Marufuji fight to the outside. McGuinness hits multiple lariats to Morishima and a super kick, but Morishima stays on his feet. So Marufuji pops in, hits Nigel with a super kick, but Danielson appears and spears Morishima to the floor, while Nigel falls right into a jawbreaker lariat on Morishima and gets the win. So I thought it was a great finish. Really damn good match. A lot of similarities with the main event of Respect Deserved, but slightly less intensity, crispness, a little bit more awkwardness and sloppiness in the layout. But these guys just worked their asses off. There were so many cool double team spots, signature spots. They definitely treated this like a big match. I would say mainly, I think the only one I'd say who was like absolutely on a game here was Nigel, but everyone else was like, maybe A minus game. And so I thought this was the best Dayton match I've seen in a long time. Really, really, really good. Even when they're not working at the absolute fullest, they are just so good. And so this was just a really, really good match. And the crowd was super into it also.
Yeah, this is another match where we're in the hand-holding club listening to Karma Chameleon, because I basically agree with everything you said, like exactly, from like the quality of the match being like, similar. It's a similar kind of match to the Respect Deserved main event, but I would say like you, it's just a little bit lesser. It's very good. I agree with like the idea of like these guys were like a lot of them were on their A minus game. They weren't on their B game. Maybe again, which is I'll take that on a B show.
Yeah, and I really do think Nigel was working his hardest.
Yeah,
But
yeah, maybe especially because he was getting the big win here. But the thing I agree most was I gotta say my favorite aspect of this match, more than the work, like the individual moves, was I love that ROH had two rivals team, and you mentioned this right off the bat too. I love that ROH had two rivals teaming together, and they did not do one speck of the overdone, tired, can they coexist squabbling partners trope. I love that. Like, not only does their team win the match, they don't argue at all. There's no miscommunication spots. In fact, like they work this as a very skilled team. Like you point out some of the double teams that work together, like Danielson's helping Nigel with spots, like whipping an opponent into his headstand kick. He's doing the double team Tower of London with him. And they're both there, always on point to help each other when they need to break up a near fall. Like, it's not that the squabbling partners trope can't be good in wrestling. It's just been done to death. And I love that ROH had the restraint to just play this match completely straight and be like, no, yeah, they even had the promo earlier to establish like, no, we don't love each other. But we have a common goal here, and teaming together tonight will help us with that common goal. Let's work together for this one night, and we're going to treat this. We're going to be adults, We're going to work well together, and we're not going to try and screw each other over or get mad or get paranoid. And I thought, I don't think you watch this match and go, man, you need that extra drama on this night. Like this was good enough. You did not need to do that for the 1,000,000th time in pro wrestling. So, and you mentioned this too, like that this was the first time Danielson ever wrestled Morishima. And yeah, like I looked that up because I knew Danielson had worked Noah tours at this point. But in fact, I think, they were on the same side and respect is earned, but being on opposite ends of the ring in a match, I think this is the first, I think you're right. Like the best I could tell, this is the first time Morishima and Danielson had ever wrestled against each other anywhere. And, we get to see brief hints of the great feud we're going to get to come. Danielson sells big for Morishima. He even plays the face in peril in this tag. And it was like somewhat of a minor novelty to see Danielson sell this much and play the underdog in this era of Ring of Honor, because in this era of ROH, Danielson's usually like the king shit front runner of matches. And so Danielson's body language I felt was so good here. He basically just implodes at times when Morishima hits him. Like he just instantly crumbles to the mat like he's made out of tissue paper. And one thing that Danielson really loves is when he sells really being beat to shit, he loves to sit on the mat and lean back and then struggle and reach real far out to try and grab a rope and just basically hang off the rope to bring himself to a seat. Like, that's his goddamn thing. Like, he loves that move, and I love him doing it. Yeah, so I felt like, yeah, like you said, this was like A minus performance from everyone other, and like you, I agree, probably Nigel A. There are parts of this match that do kind of fall into that dream partner tag vibe where it's a lot of action, a lot of quick tagging. I wish there was a little more structure and connective tissue. It's more just, hey, everyone take turns doing stuff. But you did get Danielson doing the face in peril for a short while, so that adds some. I thought Marufuji and Nigel, they brought what they usually do. I thought there was novelty to Danielson taking the beating, and there was also that, and you mentioned that novel moment to me where that moment where Morishima was staying on the second turnbuckle and he gets shoved off and he takes a bump over the top rope to the floor off the second turnbuckle, and I would say he took that bump as safely as a person could, but it was still really impressive to me because I was like, oh, there's something you don't see from Morishima every day, like taking a bump off the second rope to the floor, and it was really cool. And then Nigel does what Prezak calls a flying cross body from the top turnbuckle onto Morishima on the floor. But to me, whether it was intentional or not, it looked like he just did a lariat because he doesn't really go horizontal. And it looked like he did like a lariat from the top turnbuckle to the floor. And I thought that looked great too. Whether that was intentional or not, I thought that looked great too, especially when Morishima comes up with the bloody nose at that point. And yeah, I felt like I said earlier, there was a bit of static between Nigel and Morishima in this match. We talked about the spot where, Morishima gets pissed off. And there was also a spot late in the match where poor Morishima takes what I would say is one of the uglier looking Tower of Londons we've seen in some time, where what it looked like it happened so quick that Morishima didn't have time to really brace and prepare for it quite enough. And so it wasn't outright botched, but it didn't look great. But again, in terms of the quality of this match and everything, I completely agree with you. I thought one interesting thing I wanted to ask you about this match was the booking, because I thought that was interesting too, where it's Morishima's first direct loss of a fall, in the sense of he and Whitmer lost to the Briscoes recently, but Morishima didn't take the fall in that match, or Whitmer did. So it's Morishima's first direct loss of a fall since his ROH debut against Samoa Joe. And in fact, because he lost that much by tap out, Prazak on commentary even knows this is the first time Morishima's been pinned in ROH, period. And I'm on kind of two minds about, like, on one hand, the crowd goes crazy for it, and like to a slightly surprising degree, like they go nuts for Nigel winning this otherwise kind of meaningless tag match. And since Nigel already lost to Morishima once, and he's going to need reason to face him 2 more times before this feud is over, part of you could argue he does need a win like this to kind of give justification for rematches. But on the other hand, part of me kind of wishes that, like, would have wanted Morishima's first pinfall loss after losing to Joe to be, and Nigel's first win over Morishima to be the match where where Nigel dethrones Morishima. Like, part of me is kind of like, I would have loved you saved it where he is so dominant, where other than that Joe match, he doesn't lose at all ever. And then Nigel beats him for the title just definitively. And, look, does this really hurt that much? No. And again, half of me is like, I can see the argument for doing it the way they did it, to give him some justification for rematch. But part of me is like, do you want to waste his first pinfall loss ever on a tag match in Dayton on a B show? Like, I'm not sure. Like, this is one of those things where I probably think more about than anyone in the world. But, like, do you have any thoughts about this?
I mean, honestly, I don't.
Okay.
No, I think it's totally fine. It's totally logical, booking 101. The part that I think is weird is, like, all the weird stuff with, like, the pay-per-view timeline. So on the last taping, Danielson won a number 1 contenders match against Nigel, but here Nigel pins the champion on a show that, quote-unquote, airs before the match where Danielson wins. So Nigel gets the title match before Danielson, but they both get a title match. So, like, that seems like a little bit kind of confusing and unnecessary, but it's fine that Morishima got pinned here, in my opinion. Like, it didn't take anything away from anything. That's how I feel.
We do have one note from this that Dave wrote after this weekend in The Observer. Dave wrote, Bryan Danielson hasn't regained full strength in his arm and shoulder, but is constantly improving. Like, that is another way, like, wrestlers are just insane, where, like, if I suffered a really serious injury and I have to do, like, a physical job, I wouldn't be like, I don't have full strength in my arm yet, but I'll just wing it. like the fact that, like, he's months into his
chicken wing it.
Crossface chicken wing. But, like, it's Danielson is a nutball. Like, what's almost disconcerting to me? Have you seen, like, all the interviews Danielson's done in recent months? He's doing, like, a ton of media now lately for AEW, and he has talked about, like, whenever someone asks him, do you want to wrestle, he's like, I don't have any, like, maybe one day, but I don't have any urge now, because he says, like, the thing that put me at peace, he said this over and over again the last year, is, like, how much I hurt in the last run of AEW was like, oh, maybe I don't need to do this anymore. And I was like, how much does Bryan Danielson need to hurt where even he's like, this is too much? Like how bad a shape was he in? Because his whole life has basically been working, like, through horrific things. And
he obviously was in a lot of real pain. Like, there's no doubt about it.
So, immediately after the match, there is a huge ROH chant, and Lenny Leonard screams that was the first time Morishima had been pinned in ROH ring. Danielson and Nigel shake hands even. So, I love that even after the match, they don't do the tired, oh, they're going to start fighting now. It's like, on this night, we were a good team. And, we're not going to be friends, but this night, we were good. And, we then get an ad for ROHWrestling.com's merch store, which is outdated because the first thing they plug is Samoa Joe's t-shirt. And then that brings us to the main event, the ROH World Tag Team title best 2 out of 3 falls match. The Briscoes of Jay and Mark successfully defend the titles when they defeat Claudio Castagnoli and Matt Sydal 2-0 in 16 minutes and 13 seconds. Mark Briscoe pinned Matt Sydal in 4:55 after a moonsault, and then Mark pinned Claudio in 16:13 after he hit the cutthroat driver. The story of this match is these 4's previous match at Respect is Earned stole the show, so Claudio and Sydal each got to pick partners for separate tag title rematches with the Briscoes. Claudio chose Chris Hero in a match we covered recently. Sydal chooses Claudio on this night. That Respect is Earned match was, in fact, in my opinion, great and the match that stole the pay-per-view. This match is not that. Like, that doesn't mean this match is not good. In fact, I would call it good. I would say this is a really strong, maybe 3.5 stars. The first fall of this match goes fast and furious and basically like right from the jump. And while it's maybe not quite at the level of their previous match, it feels like we might be in for a match that isn't far off from that one, of a similar style. And then Seidel loses 5 minutes into it. It takes the first fall. And on the recent Claudio and Hero versus Briscoe's 2 out of 3 falls match, I talked about how I love the first fall where Hero celebrates a move and he gets caught not paying attention and he loses immediately just with a kick to the gut and a J driller, because it wasn't the 18 moves to a finish you always see at the end of big ROH matches. It was abrupt and surprising, but at the same time, it made logical sense. And I pointed out how having multiple falls in a match lets you have your cake and eat it too, where you can do a finish like that and still have your big, exciting, pulse-pounding, do a million things, traditional end to the match, because you've got multiple falls to play around with. Here, it doesn't work for me because we get tropes that in multiple fall matches that I don't like, which is one of them being a wrestler losing to moves that would normally never beat them, and another being a wrestler losing in a length of time they'd never lose in. And when you combine those two together, it kind of hurts my suspension of disbelief, because Seidel takes this fall here after 5 minutes into a tag match after a Death Valley driver and a moonsault, which might seem like big moves in some areas. Those would be finishers, but for 2007 Briscoes, that was like mid-tier offense for them that beat nobody. And I'm not against even like mid-level, mid-tier moves finishing matches. In fact, I'm very for styles of wrestling where not every match needs to end with a finisher. And I'm for matches that even ending occasionally to keep fans on their toes. But what I'm not for is those two things only happening in multi-fall matches like this and not becoming trends. Like, again, it kills my suspension of disbelief when these things only happen in Iron Man matches and 2 out of 3 falls matches, where the Chris Hero fall I could buy because it was a heel getting cocky and getting caught, and that does happen occasionally. This kind of fall is something that never happens in ROH and isn't going to happen going forward. It's only going to happen because it's in a 2 out of 3 falls match. But anyway, we then get Dave Prazak on commentary saying that the Briscoes have now won 5 falls in a row in 2 out of 3 falls matches, and there's no way they're going to make it to 6 in a row. And that has to have been a note he was given from Gabe to say that, because that was one of Gabe's biggest flaws as a commentator, was his love of telegraphing so many things that were about to happen by saying that there was no way they could happen. If Gabe was on commentary and he ever said something was impossible, you knew you were maximum 25 minutes away from seeing that thing he said was impossible happening. And not only did it telegraph big moments, it makes your announcers look dumb. Like here is like, when Dave Price is like, they've had 5 falls in a row in 2 out of 3 falls matches, there's no way they can do 6. Like, how could you possibly think that? Like think about, like, imagine an announcer during a hockey game and the score is 5-0 saying, there's no way this game could be 6-0. It could end up 6-0. It's like, if you said at the start of the game when it was 0-0, there's no way this game could be 6-0. I could say, okay, it's possible, but you're right. It is a long shot. Once the game is 5-0, there's a pretty good chance you could see a 6-0 game. And that's basically what they were here. And it makes the commentary look so dumb for no positive benefit. But anyway, nitpicks aside, after the first fall, second fall kind of resets and slows it down a bit. Briscoes take it to Claudio. It speeds up again fairly quickly, and it's never boring. But one of the things I felt like these two teams' first match at Respected is Earned had as a key strength was this sense of like pedal to the metal and escalation, like this pace where it was just never relenting, and you were constantly in like this flow state of great action. And here you don't get that. And that's fine if it becomes like a dramatically different kind of match than the first match, if it has some kind of payoff, but it doesn't. Like, instead, to me, this felt like a significantly lesser version of their first match with some annoying tropes of 2 out of 3 falls matches mixed in. Like, again, I want to make clear, this is a fun match. I feel guilty about talking this way about a match that like randomly just has stuff like Claudio giant swinging both Briscoes at the same time, or doing a Rana over the top rope to the floor, or Jay taking this nutty bump off the second turnbuckle late in the match to what sounds like he just doesn't hit the apron, he hits the timekeeper's table. We don't really see it because of the camera angle, but we get to hear it because I can hear him slapping wood. The crowd also, who I thought was very good on this night, we haven't really mentioned the crowd. I thought they were very lively throughout the night. They're not dead for this match, but they do seem noticeably a step down from where they've been for a lot of the shows. And I don't know whether that's fatigue or the heat that commentary kept referencing with this building not having air conditioning finally getting to them, or having to follow two very good matches back to back, or, being a long the end of a show, or just because this match from a marquee standpoint maybe wasn't the most exciting, because you talked about in the last match about the weirdness of the pay-per-view scheduling. This isn't quite an issue of pay-per-view scheduling. This sometimes happens to Ring of Honor, but you have to remember, like, the whole reason this match is being booked is because the first time these guys wrestled, it was great, and it was like, oh, people are going to be excited to see this, and maybe DVD buyers would be, but like, the first match, the ROH pay-per-view debuted in some pay-per-view carriers on July 1st. This match is taking place in June. So no one in this building has seen that match. So it's like this match is main eventing kind of probably, one, because of the tag titles, but partly because like, it's a rematch of the match that stole the show. Well, the fans aren't going to have that same level of enthusiasm because they don't know that. Like, maybe they read some live reports, but that's different than seeing it. And then finally, I'll just say, like, the finish of the second fall was also abrupt, and it was kind of like the hero fall I loved, where a guy just gets caught with a finisher against the flow of the action and loses. But with Hero, it was a payoff to a heel over celebrating. Here, Claudio's a babyface, and he isn't doing that at all. Like, he isn't celebrating or getting cocky. It's just like he just randomly gets caught out of nowhere with the cutthroat driver, and it ends the match. And I felt like it was a little. I liked the abrupt first fall in some of these matches. I felt it was kind of weird. We got an abrupt fall in fall 1 and 2. I did really like in the second fall that Jay went to Death Valley Driver Seidel again, starting the sequence that they beat him with the first fall with. But then Claudio booted Jay mid Death Valley Driver, and then Seidel hit a moonsault of his own onto Jay. I thought that was a cool kind of callback to the first fall. But again, this is a match where I'm probably a little bit harder on it because I liked the first match so much. Then I really am. Again, 3.5 stars is nothing to slouch at. In a main event, maybe you want a little bit more, especially with guys this talented. But overall, I enjoyed this match. I just didn't think it was as good as the previous two matches.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two big things this match had going against it was, first of all, the following the previous match. Like, I do think the crowd was really, really hurt by that. I think the Danielson match should have been the main event. I think it's pretty clear. Like, that was like the match everyone came to see. It definitely had the most heat and the biggest reaction. And to a lot of the crowd, Claudio and Seidel were not really thought of as main eventers at this point, and I think that made it that they had a tough act to follow. The other thing was, I just felt like you said, the first match had a sense of escalation. This match to me really felt like a hodgepodge of just stuff.
Yeah.
So it didn't have a lot of impact, I guess. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff in there, but it all just felt like, I don't know, like the order of it didn't seem quite as logical to me as it does in some other matches. It had
I completely that's a great way of putting it. I always love when you like find a way to say what I'm feeling in a better way. Like you put words in my head that I'm like, that's what I was trying to say. Like, that's a great way of putting it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very Briscoes match, I would say, for better or for worse. And, some parts were for better. They do a lot of really cool stuff. The one thing I disagree with you on is I did actually like the finish. Not the finish of the first fall. Like, I do think you're right. That was too abrupt. Just a random moonsault, like, by Mark doesn't usually finish a match. But I do like the way that the last fall ended with Mark reversing the Ricola bomb into the cutthroat driver, because I like that the Briscoes can win in a lot of different ways. Like Danielson, they have the Doomsday device. They have like the double, splashes or leg drops off the top rope. They have the J Driller. They have the Spike J Driller. They have the cutthroat driver. They have the kind of double team cutthroat driver. Like, I like that. They're all plausible finishes, and I appreciated that here. I also liked that. In the match where the Kings of Wrestling wrestled the Briscoes at Final Battle 2006, Claudio did that double giant swing on both Briscoes, but Hero helped him get into that position. In this match, he gets Mark on his shoulders and then gets Jay on his shoulders on his own. that made it more impressive, I would say. He doesn't do it for as long this time, but it was impressive just getting them into that position. Also, I noticed when Claudio yelled at one point, push up uppercut, which I guess is the one where he throws the guy up and uppercuts him on the way down. I didn't realize it had a name, so it's good to know from now on. Push up uppercut. That is what it's called.
I thought it was a pop-up uppercut, but
yeah.
You know.
Well, there you go.
Just makes you think of like icy treats, but you know what? I don't mind that either. I'm not angry at that either.
Yeah, no, but I mean, there were a lot of cool moves, and everyone worked hard. They always do. They look good. But yeah, just like one move came after another, and it just didn't what you weren't ready for each one. They just all did a bunch of stuff, and usually, I don't know. In the previous match, like they did a bunch of stuff, but it all felt like one flowed into the next in a way that elevated the match to a new level. And this one didn't feel that way. It was just like up, down, and nonstop. You know, it could have just used a little more. Like you mentioned connective tissue. This is the match where I thought could really use connective tissue. So I thought it was disappointing and, you know, kind of a letdown after the last couple matches. But still, you know, they're still good wrestlers. It was still good. But my favorite part of the match, though, came after. Because when Mark was walking to the back, he sees someone in the crowd. Hey, I got that same shirt. And then kept walking.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, so that's my favorite part of the match.
You know what would be funny? I didn't see this, but it would be funny if like the shirt was a Briscoe shirt.
Yes.
He just says that to everyone. Like, hey, where'd you get that? I own that.
Well, hopefully it wasn't a Confederate flag shirt.
So I'll tell you my favorite part. After the match, there are handshakes, but more importantly, Jay Briscoe, master of losing his gum during matches and putting it back in his mouth, because I think I've noticed it like 3 or 4 times. Apparently it has become a meme among the fans, because after the match, they show the Briscoes in the ring, and he's swatting his gum around the ring with an open hand. He picks it up off of the ring, puts it back in his mouth, and then he spits it out of his mouth into midair and like swats it into the crowd with his hand. It's like, this was like Jay Briscoe gum lore I did not know.
This is your favorite part of the match?
Somewhere someone has Jay Briscoe's gum. Look, that kind of thing. People always, when wrestlers bleed on fans or things like that, people are always like, how disgusting, you ruined that fan's night. I know when I was a certain age, like wrestlers bleeding on me, or like if I got Jay Briscoe's gum, that would have made my night. That would make me feel better after getting caught singing on Ole 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 when everyone else had finished.
Trevor, that was never me. I was never the guy that wanted to be bled on, I promise.
The first indie show I ever went to, I believe I was watching a Canadian indie show, and I believe Black Dragon and Asian Cougar were wrestling, and one of them bled on my shoe, and I was like, that's pretty cool. So, you know, I was a teenager.
Yeah, well, the first wrestling show I ever went to, I was 7, and it was an indie show in Staten Island, and the main event was Cactus Jack Manson against Sunny Beach. And Cactus Jack did a Cactus Jack match where he bled and Sunny Beach bled, and they brawled through the crowd and hit each other with surfboards. And, you know, even then, I don't think I would have wanted to be bled on, even by Mick Foley.
Well, it's good that we have a few differences, but
yes.
We end by joining Brent Albright backstage as always. He tells us
this is by the way what I said about how ROH begins their shows very strangely. Yes, definitely the most important way to end the show. Brent Albright promo.
Brent, as always, tells us that his name is Brent Albright. He says tonight showed the entire world that Morishima can be beat, and Brent is going to be the man who beats him for the ROH World Title. Very short promo. Gabe has been giving him a fair bit of promo time lately, but all his promos are him just saying, my name is Brent Albright, and I do these 2 moves. But I guess this one at least is building to Brent Albright is going to get a upcoming world title shot against Morishima, and, you know, they're playing off the fact that he did lose tonight. So, like, hey, I see this guy's beatable now. But, yeah, I agree that, like, do I ever want to end a wrestling show with Brent Albright? You know, no. But, Matt, who wins the Matt F. Trophy? Is it Brent Albright?
It's not Brent Albright.
Oh.
Sorry, Brent. One day, you know, I could think of a show where Brent Albright might win that award. I have it in my mind about what show it could be, but I can't say yet until I see it again. No, it's Nigel McGuinness. I just thought he was the best performer on the show. Worked his heart out. Got a big win. Worked smartly, worked hard. He's obviously always great, but yeah, this was another Nigel night for me. So I think he absolutely deserves it.
A deserving winner. And for the show, it's the overall show. I would say this is a good B show. if that main event had really hit, this would be like a great B show. It is, I'm happy with 3 3/4 star matches on a B show if you give me a few of those. And we had 2 and almost, I would say, a third if that main event had a little less flawed. But it was a satisfying show. It is a show, though, I would also say, where you could just watch the final 3 matches. Like you could have a good hour plus, little excursion of wrestling, like an extended lunch break, and then be happy. And if you didn't watch anything else on the show, I don't think you'd ever be up at night going, oh, there's something I desperately should have watched.
So here's the one difference between us. I mostly agree with you. I really did not like the gauntlet. I thought that was like pretty like bad for ROH standards. So that took it down. But here's one place we probably disagree. I liked the Resilience tag team match more than I liked the Briscoes tag team match on this night.
Yeah, I would not agree with that.
I thought it was more fun.
It's interesting. I feel like the Briscoes match, like the stuff I liked, the highs were higher. But what I would say is almost like what I was saying about the Kenta Rocky match. I feel like the Briscoes tag had a lot of flaws to it with the good stuff, and it kind of settled at a level to me where that Resilience tag, I feel like it is exactly what it should aim to be, right? Like I wouldn't say there's flaws in that match. I prefer the flawed match in this case a little bit more, not by a ton, but it's weird how that can work out sometimes.
Yeah, I thought that the Resilience matches had better heat, better flow, was more satisfying in the end.
But yeah, so, not a bad show. Again, you could just watch the last 3 matches or even throw in that Resilience tag. But, wow, we just came a little over 2 hours. 2 hours, and actually we started recording late, so probably under 2 hours. And we spent a lot of time talking about videotapes and brownies. We could have gone on that jag for another 20 minutes. But
right. Let's go on a jag, Trevor.
Okay. So for plugs, ThROH@gmail.com for our email address, at Trevor Dame on Twitter, at MayorMGF on Twitter. We also have similar names on Blue Sky. And next time on the show, we are going to be covering one of the big ones, and that's ROH's second pay-per-view ever, Driven, which is, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but the memory is that is a better pay-per-view than the first one. We have the Bryan Danielson Nigel match, which I know was really good. Austin Aries comes back after his very long absence from Ring of Honor. Briscoes take on Steen and Generico again. And as always, we will be watching the DVD version, which means we get a match that was taped just for the DVD version. Kenta versus Bryan Danielson 2. So
I have not seen that match since probably the first time I watched it. And there are some who feel it is better than the first one. So I am very fascinated to watch it again.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one too, because that's like, we obviously rewatched the original one fairly recently for Through the Years. And when we were doing the research for the Danielson episode, the 6-hour special, I watched one they did later on after this in Noah, which I really enjoyed. For whatever, I just didn't have time. I did not rewatch this one. So this is another one where, like you, like it's probably been like over a decade since I've seen this match. So I'm going to be really, like you, excited where it stands in like the Danielson Kenta pantheon, because those guys know how to wrestle, Matt. So until next time, for 150 episodes and a few more still, have a good time. Have a great time.